Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jim Kleiber Show. I'm Jim Kleiber. It's Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. It is hot outside. It is maybe 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which I'm guessing is in the mid 20s Celsius. That's just a guess. It could be like 22, 23, something like that. Before we get started on the show, I want to make a quick correction from the show yesterday. I was talking about Alex Trebek and Celebrity Jeopardy that they had on Saturday Night Live. And I believe I said that Norm Macdonald played Alex Trebek, which is not true. It was Will Ferrell that played Alex Trebek. Norm Macdonald occasionally came on as another guest or as one of the participants. And I think one time had the name Tad Ferguson or something along those lines. So just to correct that quickly. But moving on to the topic of the day. Today we're going to have a guest. My friend Caleb is going to join again, Caleb W. Cliff. And we are going to talk about climate change because it's 75 degrees out right now on November 10th, just a few weeks away from Thanksgiving, almost mid-November. And it's hot. And I think one of the things when we look at climate change, places are changing at different rates and different things are happening in different places. More tornadoes or hurricanes or tsunamis or things like this, more drought, more rain in other places, more snow in other places. Sometimes it's warmer, sometimes it's colder. I know a couple of years ago we had like an Arctic freeze, so that I think there was a break in the jet stream here in the United States, and a lot of the Arctic air came down and really cooled down the country quite severely. I think overall we're seeing a warming in the northern countries. And I really wonder if this is one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of policy to change climate change. It's 75 degrees out right now, and a big part of me is excited that it's 75 and not frigid cold. And I can imagine there are a lot of other people who are up here from a personal standpoint who are grateful that it's so warm outside or that it's not, 10 below zero. And that's just from a personal side, but from a professional side, I think some companies and countries are quite excited that it's warming up. Like if you look at countries like Russia and some of the countries, maybe Canada as well, or some of the countries that are very far north, have lots of land, but are mostly cold, barren land, they may be excited that their property is going to become more habitable by human beings. I think that's one of the challenges that we have in this idea of property ownership is that we're stuck with the property that we have, especially when it comes to a country. We're stuck with it. And so we try to change the environment to make it more suitable for us. Or we try to change, whether it's the climate or whether it's the land with earth-moving equipment or whether it's the trees, planting trees or taking down trees, really just to try to make the climate or make the environment suit us instead of us adapting to the environment. And if I'm a country like Russia that relies a lot on oil and gas, perhaps this opens up more places for them to do drilling. But more than anything, from what I understand about Russia geographically, it doesn't have a lot of access to warm waters. And so it has a lot of access to cold waters on the northern border. So if those colder waters no longer have so much ice, now you're opening up a lot of shipping channels, which makes it a lot easier for the country to do trade with the rest of the world. So perhaps there are these positive externalities, an externality being kind of like a third-party benefit. Talk about a lot in economics. So I do something and then it has this kind of trickle effect, this side benefit for society as a whole or other people. I think climate change has positive externalities that we don't talk about so much. we just talk about it in the context of, oh no, the world is falling apart, we need to get rid of climate change, we need to do this. And we don't talk about why some people may actually want climate change, the benefits of climate change for some groups of people or individuals. So I think it's fascinating to just pause and explore that a little more, because I think, again, countries and companies may have very strong benefits for this in terms of opening up shipping lanes or opening up more arable farmland, right? So maybe if it gets warmer in some places like Canada or the northern US or even Europe or Russia or maybe China or Mongolia, some of these countries that are farther north, then it can make it perhaps easier to farm, or perhaps give a much longer growing season. One of the challenges here in Michigan is that the growing season is quite short compared to a place like California. But if the weather in Michigan becomes more like California, then we could have a longer growing season and we can grow more food. So I wonder if there are those kind of hidden benefits that we don't talk about for some countries and companies, but also for individuals. Some people don't do well with the cold. Some people hate the cold. And it's almost like if somebody owns property here in Michigan and wants to live in a place like California, it's very expensive to go buy property in California. But if the climate is making Michigan feel more like California, oh, fantastic. I don't have to go to California. I can just stay here. And so my property value could go up as well. A weird thing, I think, when we start looking at property as investment and property as something that we own, land that's something that we own, and trying to almost hoping for environmental changes that will make our land more valuable. So I wonder if this is part of the conversation where people are thinking, and maybe some governmental decision makers and other people that are putting pressure on decision makers are almost wanting the climate to change because it could shift the relative balance of power. Right? So again, just the simple idea of owning a property or owning a house or something in Michigan, and it being less valuable than a house in Florida or California. Well, but now if there's hurricanes that are hitting Florida and all the time, well, then maybe the house in Michigan becomes more valuable. Oh, if the houses in Miami and some places on the coast are going to be underwater in a couple of years, oh, perhaps that makes my land more valuable. And so there's this, I don't know, I think we don't talk about these things in climate change much, or maybe they do, but just not on the news or much on Twitter where I see it, or in Facebook and all these other platforms. Even in regular conversations, I don't hear this much. It's almost, oh, the world is going to fall apart because of climate change and everything is going to hell and this and that. Or, no, climate change is fake. It's not really happening. It's about whether it's happening or not, instead of talking about the good and bad things that might happen from it, and who's going to benefit and who's going to be worse off. I think we often talk about who's going to be worse off, but I don't think we talk so much about who's going to benefit from climate change. And with anything, especially when there's private ownership of things, and you could argue that a country is just a collective private ownership of land and resources. When there's private ownership of things, then often sometimes people win, some people lose. It's a very zero-sum game in some ways. And I'm curious to look at it from that perspective. Have you thought about it from that perspective? How do you gain from climate change? What are the benefits to you personally from climate change? Does that have anything to do with the climate where you're at? Does it have anything to do with the property that you own? Does it have anything to do with the businesses that you run or want to run? Does it have anything to do with your ability to travel or interact with other people? I don't know. Just curious if you've ever reflected on it this way. I think we can get so stuck sometimes in the conversation about whether it is happening or it is not happening, and not go into the conversation of, okay, let's assume it's happening. Who wins and who loses? Who benefits and who gets hurt? Who gains? Yeah, who gains and who loses? And again, the thing about that is that I think with climate change, it's so much outside of our control and our understanding. We have some ability to control how much the CO2 we're putting into the air and how much we're contributing to it, I would say. Less ability to control what the whole ecosystem is doing as a reaction to it. And I don't think we have really any idea what's going to happen in different parts of the world. There's guesses. Initially, it was global warming, and then it switched to global climate change. There's, I think, a lot of research and guesses, and perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps there is more certainty about the impacts it's going to have in different places. I just think they have kind of overall trends and guesses that they have, but they're not sure where it's going to hit and what the domino effects may be of these different changes. So, for example, what happens if climate change wipes out the Great Barrier Reef just off the coast of Australia because the ocean temperature rose too much? What happens? What happens when there's no Great Barrier Reef? How does that impact the local ecosystem over there when such a large stronghold or anchor of the ecosystem disappears? I don't think we can even predict what happens socially. Right? So what happens if certain cities get flooded and go underwater, and these cities have huge amounts of people? You could say Miami in the US, but what about some other cities across the world that are right on the ocean? I used to live in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam. Dar es Salaam's right on the ocean. What if Dar goes underwater? Where are those 3 million or so people going to go? Are they going to go to different parts of Tanzania? Are they going to go to a different country? Are they going to go across the ocean to a different place? What's going to happen when all these people start moving? How is it going to impact countries, and how is it going to impact businesses? How is it going to impact cultures, peace and stability? How much war, refugees will result from this? But it's nice outside. At some point, I think we're, as individuals, we're very simple animals, and we don't really comprehend what's going on. Even as a collective group, we can get much closer to approximating what's happening. But I still think some things are easier to do, like flying to the moon or going to Mars. I think in a way that's easier than dealing with some of the changes here on Earth, because there's a lot of different elements that are interacting with each other. Whereas the moon doesn't seem to have as many, or the vacuum of space as well. What happens if climate change or something that we're doing with fungicides or something else kills off a large swath of the bee population in the US? What happens when we don't have bees that are able to pollinate the plants and the fruits and a lot of the food that we have in the country? What happens? Right? They just disappear. Like when one key element disappears, what is the domino effect? And not just disappears, but changes dramatically. What happens if the permafrost thaws? So the permafrost is up in places like Canada and Russia and, places farther north. And it's permanent. It's called permafrost because it's permanently frosted or frozen over. It's ground that I think is permanently frozen. What happens when that starts to thaw and animals and bugs and bacteria that have been trapped in it, either died in it or from a bacteria standpoint still survive, get unleashed? What happens when a lot of the methane or a lot of the gases that were trapped up there start to release as well. You know, what's going to happen? Like, that's from, again, the negative side. I think we can talk about like it could be negative, it could be positive. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think there's the assumption that something bad is really going to happen from it, but it's the uncertainty. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty around it. Not sure how the environment is going to swirl together. And I just want to check to see if my friend's actually coming. But the uncertainty about what's happening and what will happen if climate change doesn't, if we don't do something to try to get it under control. And maybe, you know what, maybe some people who say climate change doesn't exist actually believe that it exists, but think maybe too confidently that they know how they're going to benefit from it. Right? Perhaps they're certain that this is going to help them expand their farmland or their the land where people could live, or their shipping routes, or their drilling locations, or one location or another. Perhaps they just have more and more confidence about what's going to happen, even though they probably don't know what will happen. I think from what I've understood about a lot of the research on climate change is that they seem to feel confident that the climate is going to change, and they are not necessarily sure how it's going to change and where it's going to change and what impact that will have on the planet overall. Yeah, and what impact it will have on the human species and other species that are still here on the planet. So, yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest things is just the uncertainty in it. But I think some of us can get so confident about how bad it will be or how good it will be, instead of just pulling back and asking ourselves, do we really want to unleash such an uncertain power in the world? I don't know. On that note, time to open up and invite Mr. Caleb into the show. Hello, Caleb.
Hello.
Hey, I can hear you.
Great.
Oh, I was just talking about the glory of climate change and how I think we mostly talk about how the bad things of climate change and the bad things it's going to do. And I don't think we reflect enough on how some people may actually benefit from climate change.
Tourist industry?
Tourist industry. I didn't think about it. Tourist industry. I was thinking more of like the northern countries, Canada, Russia, and some other places that have a lot of land, but a lot of it's locked up because it's too cold.
Well, and there is that one of the big things in that regard, and which just freaked me out because it was just like, it was no consideration of what this means. It was all just like, oh, but opens shipping routes in the Antarctic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. But at what cost? Like, great, so our profits soar, and then but that means that more people can take advantage of the earth without considering the consequences of it. So it's a short-term gain, if honestly.
But the trick is, for me, and what I was coming to near the end of the monologue or so, was the idea that it's so uncertain what will happen. From my understanding of a lot of the climate change research, it's that we're pretty sure that the climate is going to change. We don't really know how much it's going to change and who it's going to impact and how it's going to impact the planet. We don't.
I guess other than
we have guesses in some ways, but we don't know what's going to happen. For example, if the permafrost is no longer permanently frozen,
right?
Like, is that good? Is it bad? Does it mean, maybe it stabilizes the planet more? Maybe it doesn't.
Well, that's the thing is, so 70. What is it? It's at least 70%, if not higher, of the world's water reserve is frozen in Antarctica.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot. There is a lot of water. And now I'm, these some of the things I'm going to say, I just want to say this for the sake of your listeners or viewers, are things that I've thought about by myself. I don't know if there is a way to research some of the conjectures I'm going to make. So I just want to make that disclaimer known. I'm not speaking totally from like evidence or fact-based things, but I think to what you're speaking of is even the scientists doing the heavy lifting of the research still can only make conjecture about what would maybe happen. But I do think, considering past ice ages and sort of, if you will, what feel like earthly resets to me as a means of, because if we are right in the theory of how Earth took its shape, much of life came from water, right? First started in the water, then developed over time. Land was still formulating, crystallizing. Then the land became inhabitable. And then more and more creatures and plants and things were developing on land in addition to what was happening in the water. So to me, the critical point is when the earth is recovering itself to a great degree with water. So in a sense, it's going back to its origination of where it knew how to grow and knew how to, and I imagine too, even like reset atmospheric levels of ozone, all that stuff. But it's just on an Earth schedule. So this takes, we're speeding up what would be a normal process for the Earth. This is, again, my conjecture, and that if we do indeed melt basically all of what's currently frozen, then the Earth's like, oh, well, time to reset. So a lot of things will shift heavily, and then new growth will form. I don't know that it means everything on Earth dies per se, but it changes living conditions for such a variety of ecosystems and habitats that it's hard to think that the majority of things on Earth would survive this. Now, all that said, since you were on that very one topic, I just figured I'd get that out of.
May I comment on that?
Sure, absolutely.
So you're basically saying we should all grow gills and embrace this new water world?
No, of course not.
Come on, Kevin Costner did
it. Did he? I never actually saw.
You never saw that movie? Oh,
no. I know what it's about.
I love it. Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I do feel like I should go. It just got was like 94. I don't know, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I should go back. I should watch that sometime. So here's the thing. I think back to your original point of being able to take advantage of quote unquote climate change. And I only say that in this way is because there's a lot of different feelings and associations with that phrase, but to quote unquote take advantage, and I didn't mean to put climate change in quotes, is that there's so much research that's already been done within more sustainable design, within more using less fossil fuels, within doing things that are more seamless, that are more in relation to the earth, that if we just started directing ourselves, and the Green New Deal is a nice step, but it doesn't even, I think it requires the imagination of artists and thinkers and innovators and technologists to work together. But we could be just as prosperous, but working together with the earth, not only taking from it to do other things. I think we're just so used to where our status quo is now, and I think it's just a monster, like a paradigm shift of thinking.
I think it goes quite deep, actually. I mean, another thing I was talking about was just how this idea of owning land really makes us want to force the environment to adapt to us versus us adapting to the environment. So not even just from a climate change standpoint, but even talking about from a renewable energy standpoint. People who work in the oil industry don't want the oil industry to go away because now they're not going to have money. And perhaps they've invested a lot of time and money into building this oil garden. And now this garden needs water, and it needs rain, and it needs sunshine, and it needs all these environmental factors to keep it growing. And they don't want it to just disappear because they can't just move to another garden. Somebody else has put up walls around that garden. So it's like, I mean, Garden of Eden perhaps, but like this idea of that when we're nomadic and when we're less attached and protective and controlling of the land, then we can be, I think we can be much more adaptive to it. But when we try to own it and control it, then we try to control everything around it. And it goes for companies as well. We're less adaptive to what's happening in the human environment, the technological environment, because we can't. We'll get screwed over. We'll lose all our money and all our business and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's definitely something that a lot of companies are holding on to is their habits. The things they've known up to this point. I do think if we took some measures to safeguard the ability to have these sidelines of brainstorming and what have you in order to help start correcting some of the damage we've done in terms of climate change and extreme shifting of ecologies and habitats. So I get basically it's like we'd have to. That's why it's a paradigm shift. We'd have to rethink the world economic system as it is. We'd have to rethink ownership. We'd have to rethink a lot of things. But the thing is the human imagination, in my opinion, is amazing and so and infinite. And it's just a matter of putting the imagination and resources together to actually envision a more integrated future with the earth, and not just, oh, look, our infinite resource that keeps on giving and keeps on giving. That comes with a price, and we're, depending on where you are in the world, you're experiencing that more or less. But I do think, being 44 myself, I have enough memories of when every year was relatively similar to the last one in terms of seasons. You could rely on certain things to be true. And, as you mentioned to me earlier today before coming on, it's 75 in Detroit on November 10th. And in Philly, it's about the same. Even in Boston today, I know it's around 75 or so. So as nice as that feels in the present moment to be in this beautiful weather, because over the weekend, oh my gosh, it was glorious. I took a few bike rides, spent more time outside than I had been. But that I'd rather it be cooler and have to do the things I need to do just to know that we get to keep living in this enchanted place. And I get it. It's hard. That's hard to ask nearing 8 billion people to make a huge left turn, or whatever you want to call it, from the path they've been on. Anyways, it makes me want to get inspirational, but I'll cut short of that and just, that I have a lot of ideas. I've been thinking about this for many years. And so it feels very, very in grasp if we just directed ourselves that direction.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm just thinking it's a quite fundamental change. One other thing I talked about was the idea that, it's 75 degrees out now. If it stays this warm into November every year, the growing season in Michigan will get longer. Perhaps there will be 2 harvests. You know what I mean? Like, if it gets long enough, there could be 2 harvests, which for farmers in Michigan may double their productivity compared to farmers in California. Perhaps California will get hit with more droughts and get hit with more fires So, now farmland in Michigan may gain value compared to farmland in California. So if I own private property in Michigan, I gain from climate change. And so it's like at least I seem to gain from climate change in the short term. And it's very hard to know what's going to happen in the long term. Perhaps maybe I gain even more, or I get more screwed. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's
and that's, I feel that, and that's the part that's so challenging to me is, that's true. There'll be a lot of like weird fluctuations within market values and where you can kind of take advantage of these shifts due to climate change. But I mean, again, I just say at what cost overall? I do really think what disentangling ourselves from ownership, which is I understand, is an insane thought. But I feel like it's to a large degree, if we don't do that to a large degree, I do think it's going to be really hard to salvage and carry forth in a collaborative manner, where it's not just serving the people of Michigan or not just serving the people of California or not just serving the country of Mexico, but it's serving the world and, doing our best to keep intact what we can. And here, I'm going to say something even crazier. I think the human imagination is so capable that if we really, really worked together, I think we could actually stabilize this. And I don't want to say reverse it, but if we reinvest in the earth, we could, bring back more forests. We could bring back more of the natural cycles that help this place be just what it is and be healthy. And last thing I'll say about that little comment is you could argue that the population of the earth and the health of the earth is sort of a reflection of the health of the population of the earth is a reflection of the health of the earth itself. And I don't think this world is that healthy these days. So, meaning you want a healthy world and a healthy populace of world populace, you develop a healthy world.
You mean human world?
Human populace, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And to develop a healthy human population, you work on your own health. We work on our own health.
Right. we have to work together.
Because it's really hard to force somebody else to be happy or healthy or honest or trusting. It's much easier to work on ourselves and hope that our behavior changes and therefore theirs may change.
No, it's a collaboration. I think it's not a I win and you get to maybe win sometimes. No, we all got to win. We all got to win at the same time.
It's funny, I think personally, I love the concept of more collective ownership of things in theory. And then in practice, I can be super controlling over the things that I work on. No, I don't want other people to own this with me. They're going to screw it up. That's a thought that goes through my mind very often. They could also improve it. They could also give me breaks. They could also,
Well, it's a healthy open source version of this would be interesting, where you insert something and then someone else kind of sees that and they're like, oh, that's good, but if you just modified this, I think because that ownership component, like you were just indicating, causes a desire for control. And I think sometimes our egos cause us to maybe act like we have a skill that we don't necessarily have. We just have the yearning of keeping it in a very specific way. So again, it's such an insane shift. I don't not see that. And so I think it would take a lot of effort for us to really make a shift in that way.
It's so even talking about open source, I've looked at the open source community a lot in terms of software.
Yeah.
And it's still mostly a handful of people that are maintaining the one app or software that it is.
Or like
It could be open source towards a lot of people, but it's still kind of governed, maintained, controlled by a handful most of the time. Some of them are open; they throw them out to the ether, and people can use them however they want. But even then, there's often still one person maintaining the code, or a handful of people. And so it's this, for me, it's this idea of like maintaining and nurturing, like as parents, as a parent of a child, a human child, we nurture it so that it can grow, so that it's safe from the environment, and we protect it. And it just seems like we nurture and maintain and grow so much stuff that maybe when we were nomadic foragers, we would nurture and maintain our children and our own health, and maybe like a lean-to or some type of tent or some type of shelter we would bring with us, and maybe a few tools. And that was about it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Like just really minimalist. But at the same time, if we only maintained those things, then, and maintain language, because language and culture is something that we have to like maintain, traditions, rituals, you need the person who maintains it. But at the same time, if we did that, we wouldn't have computers. Like, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't have the almost endless food supply that we have in the U.S. right now.
Right. I would likely not know you because I never would have traveled as far as 3,000 miles from where I was.
Walking 3,000 miles? No way. Forrest Gump, maybe, but come on.
This is another one of those things. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think we've done a lot of we can, so we are, but they definitely aren't because we should. And but that's an invitation from capitalism. Capitalism, I think, pushes us a little too far to, in turn, causing us to put a strain on our resources, because we don't have collective relationships with access and to the things that we own, and that drives each billionaire to want a yacht, each billionaire to own their own baseball team, each billionaire. I mean, I'm being extreme, but just to make a point of, those are big things. Those are very large things that consume a lot of things. And we apparently, more and more people keep becoming billionaires. We keep wanting to grow billionaires. So in order to supply the billionaires and also the other people who are rich enough to own things, that starts getting really costly. And so I do not want to outright villainize capitalism. I think it has its pros too. I just think a little more regulatory, more regulation around having this bit. I'll put it this way: having that amount of money takes a whole new level of responsibility that we have not really made a major point of. And that level of responsibility, I think, should, number one, consider the earth and consider that relationship. Anyways, as I was saying before, I've thought a lot about a lot of these things, so I don't want to get too caught up in any one of them, but I'm just trying to relay bits and pieces here.
I mean, but even if you go towards a system like socialism or communism, really communism, like Marxism and stuff like this, where the population owns it, right, where everything is publicly owned in some ways, it's still owned and controlled by humans. We're still maintaining and nurturing it. We're still trying to thwart, fight against the environment.
Well, and I would even say fight against our memory and our habits.
What do you mean?
So if somehow, like, one night we go to bed, right? The whole world goes to bed at the same time, just for the sake of this analogy. And we all wake up and we're all naked, and no buildings, no technology, nothing of that nature exists anymore. Right? Somehow we'd have to confront that. And I think maybe that's too extreme. But the point being is, oh, sorry, habits and memories. We would be still so indebted to having a bed and not sleeping in a cave, to living inside of a house, to taking the bus to work or biking or driving. All of those things would still be embedded from our memory, even though the whole world was stripped of that physical memory, identity of these things. I think the more we do something, the more it is harder for us to separate from it, especially when you're talking about billions of people doing those same activities. So that's the challenge is, how do we take these habits and this memory, this collective memory of humanity, and start shifting it in such a way that it does tend to the earth, still allows for ownership, personal ownership, collective ownership, whatever ownership, but starts pushing us in that direction of like collaboration with the earth, not, oh, look, you give me all the things that I need to go run my business, but I never tend to you. You know, like, it's a lot of it, I can see it in my head. It's a little hard to, it's so much content to try.
Collaboration with the earth. Say, for example, I'm growing a garden. How do I collaborate with the earth?
Well, you harvest it, I think, strategically or honorifically, so to speak. There are a number of methods. Permaculture, as I'm sure you've heard of, the whole point of that is it requires a certain amount of work, but then once it gets into its prime, then, you know, it's basically zero loss, zero impact game with the earth. So that's one way of harmonizing with the earth. You know, there's different, like ancient.
But that only works if the environment stays the same, right?
Well, that's the
it's
thing.
75 in November. Does it still work? You know, because like my pepper plants are dying.
Well, no, but that's where the humans play their part. They use their intelligence to modify things as needed. I mean, we're so capable, but we're just, you know, we're very distracted by shiny objects and wanting to be entertained and wanting to play and I think we can have that too. See, that's the hard thing to. It's just get it more related to the earth. You can still have football teams. Technology will be a stretch, but at the same time, I think it's possible because I just think we're that capable of a species. We've just focused on the cyber. What is it? I can't think of it. Anyway.
Well, I want to go on that point with the garden and you saying we can adapt. It's like, say, for example, I don't have a garden, I have a farm. And in the farm, I grow, let's say, something that's tropical. Let's say I grow bananas.
Okay.
And actually, let's say I grow pumpkins or something that's like, or apples, something that's typically
bananas.
Yeah. No, let's say it's a Michigan farm, so I grow like pumpkins or something. But what happens when the climate gets too warm and I can no longer grow pumpkins? I'm making tons of money from selling pumpkins. I don't want to have to sell a new product because that means I have to create a new market. I have to create people's tastes have to change. Like maybe they like pumpkin seeds, eating pumpkins. Now I have to switch and sell bananas. People don't like bananas. They don't know what bananas are.
Well, I will say though, in my thinking of this is hopefully Michigan does not get to that point.
Yeah, but, hopefully. Yeah.
But and if that's happening, then I feel that whatever I'm talking about isn't going to also be happening simultaneously.
Well, I mean, in the U.S., like maybe we have much more control over this in terms of climate change than many other countries, like Tanzania or Uganda. Like perhaps they grow a certain food and then it becomes a desert. What are they supposed to do when there's no water anymore? Like, It's hard. It's really hard to adapt to growing things when the water just disappears.
Well, and this is what happened in Darfur. Did you ever see An Inconvenient Truth?
I didn't see Inconvenient Truth, no. But I did go to a rally about Darfur in DC in like 2006, something.
Okay. Well, maybe you learned about it through that. But Lake Chad used to exist. And Lake Chad, you can see, starting in the late 60s, I think, just started dwindling, just receding and receding and receding and getting smaller. And so the genocide that was happening in Darfur was directly related to that loss of water, because water was becoming so valuable that they started killing the weaker side, basically, as that water disappeared. I mean, we're talking drastic changes in a decade. It was probably a tenth of the size it was before that.
And when we are attached to the land, because we're not allowed to move to other land where there is water, it's trouble.
Oh, well, again, yeah. I think ownership, I've written about ownership, and it's very problematic. It makes us into tiny little demigods of little places we think we get to have say over how it should be and how it should exist. Meanwhile, Earth's doing Earth's thing. Earth does not care about what you own or don't own. It only cares about how you engage and interact with it.
But the challenge is there's I was thinking about this. There's almost no way to live in society without owning something. You have to own stuff, because like I looked at it and I was like, okay, what if I wanted to own nothing? Well, I still have to pay money to the government every year. Like property taxes. I mean, I guess that's owning. You still own property or whatnot. But like, just it's almost like in money as a form of ownership. It's owning a debt or owning an IOU to somebody else. Or from somebody else, rather.
I mean, yeah,
owning money, right?
I think it's the reinvention of value. Like how we see value. What is the philosophy of value? What does value actually provide for us individually? What does it provide for us as a species? And we place value in very abstract ways, and we place value in very direct ways. But money is a means of forcing us into one very specific type of value system, to a bunch of assets, to a bunch of services, to a bunch of things, and that's the abstraction. And it is very peculiar that some of us can acquire so much value exchange, right? Money, much more than another person can. In some cases, even close to what a country like Jeff Bezos probably has more money than Luxembourg it does as a country. Or something.
I don't know. Some of those small countries are super rich,
so. Right? The Maldives. You get my point. Like,
or maybe like African country, like or some Southeast Asian or African country.
Yeah, but you get my point.
It's like Liechtenstein and Monaco. Some of those are super rich.
Yeah,
I think
Monaco. That's a good example.
They have a lot of money though.
Right. But so does Jeff Bezos. But he's one dude.
Yeah.
So it's just and I know I keep coming and saying this. It's like it's a huge, insane, fundamental shift that people would have to make if we are in earnest going to do something that really impacts this place. And I do not think setting our sights on going to terraform a place like Mars is any kind of thing that we should get too attached to. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson's reaction to this idea on the Colbert Show. Have you seen this?
I think so. What could you remind me?
Oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson just rips them all a new one. He's like, oh, so you want to go 200 million miles with enough, like, first off, we don't have enough fuel to get you that far. We'd have to create some kind of, fueling engagement for you to get that far, or like a recreation of fuel within the cycle, within the system of the transport. And then you want to take all of this stuff that you would need to create a dome and to actually terraform Mars. He's like, good luck with that. And yeah, there's so many things that's cool. I get it. It's fun to think about. But I think as an exercise, as a much more valuable practice would be to focus that type of attention on restoking this beautiful place we live on already. And
it for me, it's believing that we aren't animals and that we don't rely on the environment. Like, I don't know, like the let's go live on Mars is like, you don't like, well, one, you don't even like nature, but two, you don't realize how much we thrive, like we are dependent upon human, like planet, the ecosystem on this planet. Sorry. Gosh, we can't even, there won't be oxygen on Mars. There won't be water, just the basics.
It's crazy.
Well, how are you going to pollinate the foods? Like, what about penicillin and some of these things? You're going to bring that along too? Like, where are you going to get medicines? Where are you going to get pop, soda? Where are you going to get Coca-Cola from? Like, where are you going to get sugar from? Where are you going to get all this stuff from?
It'll be sponsored by Coke.
Everything we eat comes from a plant or from an animal or like.
Mm-hmm. Even the synthesized stuff still originates in nature.
Mm-hmm.
You got to modify that to become the synthetic thing. Nothing.
We're going to get plastic. Plastic comes from oil, which comes from old plants.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's all rooted in this big, huge, amazing thing. Like when you stop and think about what a human is and what like plants are and anything, it's nuts. It's crazy. Like this is, and not to get too spiritual or anything, but this is what, when I take this moment to reflect of just how impossible I am and yet I exist, like, and the earth, oh my gosh. I mean, I just recently started following this photographer, Daniel Corden, I think. Oh my gosh. He, like one of the most recent things he posted was Patagonia, a large part of very southern South America, Chile and Argentina. It's amazing. I'm like, I've never seen a place like this. It's absolutely breathtaking. He even highlighted some swamps in Louisiana and Texas that looked like another world. I was just like, that's in the United States? I can go there? Like, I could drive there. I mean, it'd take a while, but I could go visit this mystical, like trees, just gorgeous, kind of willowing trees growing out of water. And, there were like horses walking through it. It was like a never-ending story. It was real. No, I mean, in that, I'm so interested in this place because there's so much it has that I've never seen, and I don't need to see it all, but I just to keep that beauty or restore that beauty or to invest in that beauty. That to me, it doesn't have to be that hard, of just a matter of becoming more intimate with nature and realizing just how connected we are to it. But yeah, that you're right. We're not connected to it.
We don't feel connected to it.
Well, yes.
We are, and I agree. I want to make that more explicit because I think it reminds me of politics, actually. I was thinking about what was going to happen with the upcoming Biden administration. I thought, you know what? Perhaps the Biden administration will help out a lot of people who are struggling financially right now. It may help a lot of people who voted for Trump, but actually get economic benefits more from Biden than they would have from Trump. But they may not believe that they did. So, so in the same way, it's like we are part of nature. Like our bodies are, what they say, we have more bacteria cells in our body than we do like human cells. Like
it's something like we're like 60 trillion cells or some wackadoodle number.
Yeah.
And even though they only represent 3% of our body weight, they represent like 5/6 of our actual number of cells. 50 of
the bacteria. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we are connected to nature. We just may not believe we are connected or feel connected.
We've taken big strides to disconnect from it.
Yeah. Yeah. We sit inside a house and we don't have any, like, we may have a plant in our house. And we, like, in some countries, we fight very hard to not have any insects or any bugs or like the same thing, but like, or any mammals or anything else come into the house. We fight very hard.
Yeah.
So not birds come into the house. Like,
yeah, I do think that's an unfortunate kind of side effect of advancing.
Well, it's, I wonder how much we've just been hurt by nature. Hurt in some ways, like betrayed or screwed. So, like, again, like trying to grow a garden. I think it's easy for someone here in the suburbs who's growing a garden to get very angry and hate deer. Because deer eat all the tomatoes. Or deer will sometimes eat the leaves before the tomatoes even grow.
Yeah.
Right? Or the groundhog. The freaking groundhog will just sit there and just look at you and be like, yeah, what? What are you going to do? And you just, and you got chipmunks and you got squirrels and you got birds and you got, like,
there is,
you said, you get pumpkins or whatever, and then the chipmunks start taking bites out of it. And you're like, what the heck, man? Like, and so that, like, no, leave it alone, but not being able to converse with them. And in other words, not being able to enforce my control over it and being really annoyed when somebody else doesn't see that it's my property.
Or see some other beings.
That's what I mean. Like, yeah, the deer doesn't know where property lines begin and end.
Yeah. Oh.
It's like, ooh, a tomato.
Yeah, exactly. Lunch. Cool.
Fantastic. Oh man. Come back to this cafeteria more often.
Well, and that, I do think nature within the animal world represents that lack of ownership altogether very well. Now, granted, I think that the two things that then come into consideration are, yes, but that deer is also nervous of not finding enough food, of local predators, it's, nature is messy. Like, even though it's beautiful, but it isn't fair in the sense of, all fawns get created or get treated equally by the forest. Sorry, no.
Yeah. The hungry lion goes after the antelope regardless.
Right. Well, and so the moral ethical dilemma of wanting to mirror nature more is being in the strange position that humans are in, of like, oh gosh, I have memory, I have language, I have a seemingly endless space in which to create from and consider and think about, and I have friends, and they're another whole new infinity that has all of these things available to them. And then you want to somehow like make space, like, to bring your morals and ethics into a more natural world. Whew. That's an all-night party right there.
Arguably, it's because we have enough time, because we're not looking for food constantly, that we can bring some of these things into the world.
But we still did, even though, we made art and we made music and we danced and we made culture to some extent while we were still a bit closer to nature.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's funny because I think about what in the future, if anything, will document the time of the humans.
I just had images of like Simpsons and space characters. what was the guy's name? What's the guy's name with the big eye?
Oh. the two guys?
The two guys, the green guys with the big eye.
I don't remember, but I love those guys. Yeah. Yeah.
In a way, as we create new things, this is a struggle that I've had, and I think it relates to climate change. As we create new things, we can't, if we just create them and let them go off, they may die. So we create them and then we nurture them and we maintain them and we maintain them. So if we come up with a new podcast, I have to maintain, one, keep doing them, right? If people want to keep watching new ones. But two, just maintain that they still remain on a web server. Three, maintain that the website still works. Four, maintain that the website still works in different browsers. And like all these different things I have to maintain, which is on a computer away from nature. So the more stuff that I build that's not nature, it's almost like the more I have to maintain this stuff that's not nature, and I have less time with nature. And nature can screw me up, right? I'm trying to maintain this website, and I'm trying to do this podcast where it's quiet, and then like I would like to have the windows open, but it's windy outside, so I can't have the windows open because it'll be hard to record this. So, if it starts raining and I have like a roof, like a metal roof in some places, you clink, 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 clink. Like, well, I can't record now because it clink, clink, clink. So I hate nature. Screw nature. I'm trying to maintain this thing that I can't do because of nature.
No, I believe me, my computer, for better or worse, is like the hub for almost everything I do at this point. Where I make my music, where I make a lot of art, and therefore how I make money. And I think if I do it on a very simple individual scale, I can kind of wrap my head around some of the things. But once you start expanding that into to say like just your city, for example, let's say all of Detroit, and you have to think about what are the ripple effects of, humans or what are the ripple effects of nature in each human, right? And then every human in Detroit. Yeah, your mind's going to explode. You can't think about all that. But you made me think of something that I hope it comes back. Was the first thing that you said. Shoot. It's okay.
About the recording and the sound like that?
Well, it was right after I made my comment about who's going to document what the human period on Earth. You made a comment. And
first thing I said was aliens.
Oh.
The Simpson aliens looking back.
Right. Well, it's not important. But again, with the collective will, I do think that we could strike a far better compromise with the Earth and then move towards something that's more integrated, more collaborative. I honestly think the Earth is sending us little signals and communicating little messages to us in its language, in the language of nature, in the language of species, in the language of all the things that come from the Earth. But we're not trying to decipher the code of Earth. So we're missing a lot of the details. But I'm not going to go too deep, and I'm not going to go into this because I don't want to come off as crazy. But
but I will anyways.
No. I'm just saying. I just feel like that. But indigenous peoples all around the world, I think, were far more in touch with nature's languages and what nature was expressing at different time periods. And a lot of that has been lost because we've become so dedicated to, again, human advancement, which I don't know what we're advancing towards. It just seems all that we're really doing is advancing away from the Earth. And I think that's where we've kind of got this. We're in the midst of a avalanche, and we're so caught in it we don't know how to stop it. And being an
Well,
avalanche.
it's. I think I wonder if a lot of it is just because of the things that we're maintaining are more sensitive to the environment. So, like back in the day, people maintained horses or people maintained farms. I mean, people still do, and I think the ones that do have a much stronger connection to the environment, to like the sunshine, to the rain, to the snow, to the soil, to things like this, to insects, to everything. Whereas when we started writing things down, well, you can't write down outside too much because if it rains, the paper just gets destroyed. So now you have to find a place indoors to write. Oh, but if it gets dark, then you can't write at night. So now you need a light.
Fire.
So now you can't do fire, right? Maybe you can do fire, but then you can't breathe inside with the fire. It really smokes you out. Or if the fire tips over, it burns down the whole house and all the paper you wrote. So now you need like electricity. Okay, now you got electricity so you can write inside. Well, the problem with writing is you can't really send it. You try to send it, well, it could get wet. It could, you have all the problems with writing it outside. So now you're trying to send it. Okay, now what if I can come up with an electronic way to send it, or like a radio way to send it? Oh, but the radio equipment doesn't do well with water. Like, how do I protect the radio equipment from the water?
Well, but what's interesting,
or the sunshine, the UV rays can degrade plastics and degrade other things. So how do we protect? Oh man, like,
but
a lot of the things we try to maintain are really just fighting against nature that's trying to degrade it or integrate it in some way.
Well, but what's funny though is you kind of highlighted a partial timeline of incremental choices we made that again were just further from nature.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, and it's not to say that human progress has been bad or like, I don't think it intentionally was trying to run away from nature. I think we just, the more little things that happened when we first discovered alternating current, that was huge. And it transformed what we could do, and for safety purposes and for more places we could inhabit more easily, right? Mm. It allowed us to expand more. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is, and this is, I'm sure people will give me flack for saying stuff like this, but that level of human expansion that we have done, I don't think was ever a great idea, regardless of all the cool results of it, all the fun, going to do an escape room, having my computer, watching football from home, but that's being projected from a stadium, satellites, like the list just goes on forever of all these cool things we've done. But it has been at the cost of ignoring whether or not it relates to anything of a natural cycle. And so the big thing is, to me, is reconciling with our mother. And until we do anything of the shape or form, the U.S. is a bad example. We can't even reconcile with a not that distant past, of racism and slavery. Then we're going to reconcile with the big mother, the one who gave us all a chance to live.
I think it's hard in some of these very simple, like, daily interactions that we still have that we would have to give up.
Yeah.
For me, interacting with you on a camera right now requires me to have lighting, requires me to have quiet. So if it's not that light outside right now, so I need artificial light inside to boost it up. Some days it's light, some days it's not. I could be more near the window, and but I don't have the windows in the house, and there's other things, right? I could change the house, but
it isn't. I just want to highlight one thing, just real quick. It doesn't have to be quite such a drastic shift. There's an amazing book called Cradle to Cradle. Mm-hmm. It is about that's a design theory. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes we make things that are cradle to grave. Mm-hmm. You buy it, it's great, it's new, it's young, unused. You use it for a year, who knows, however long, and then it's done. Then we don't have any way of reintegrating it, separating it back to its original constituent parts, and allowing it to be used in some other way again. cradle to cradle theory is just as it sounds. Once it gets to the end of that use, it's still 100% of it has use somewhere else. And the guy there's two guys who wrote this book, but the one guy is a architect who does a lot of stuff within sustainable architecture. But basically, he highlighted a handful of the projects he's been a part of where, and we're talking big companies, Ford, Nike, I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but transforming their plants in such a way that the impact on the earth was as close to zero, in some cases actually giving back. Like a textiles industry in Switzerland and something that he worked on, the water that was coming in was going through such a healthy process during the textile creation process. By the time it was exiting, was better, was cleaner water. Yeah, and that's what I mean by the human imagination is so capable if we just dedicate the time and energy to it. And you wouldn't have to, compromise by not having your light. You wouldn't have to lose your nice house necessarily. We just do these things a little differently. Believe me, if we can extend this conversation some other time, I could tell you so many things. I was dedicated like 15 years now to keeping up with sustainable architecture and design in all ways, and we're amazing. Humans are unbelievable in what they can do, and without necessarily at the cost of losing all of these nice things.
So then why do you think we haven't done it that way? Those ways?
Knowledge and habits and corruption, I guess. Sorry, that's my short answer. Because if we did it collaboratively, then control would be lost. And humans just have this obsession with control. We created gods so that we could then create gods out of ourselves here on Earth. I mean, sorry, that's a statement that people are going to not like either. But it still was only humans that first recognized gods.
Oh, that we know of.
True. You get my point.
Yeah.
I haven't met the deer gods yet, but I'm waiting. Maybe they'll explain to me why they get to the tomato before I do.
The squirrels look like they have them. You ever seen them jump from trees? They must have some belief in a higher power if they're willing to take that risk.
Yeah. Well, they just know they can.
Yeah, I'm going to make it. I know I am. I believe.
We could save that for another episode if you want.
What, the conversation about making gods? Or
No. Yeah, I don't want to follow that one down. You get down that wormhole too far.
I'll let that one slip. Yeah.
The upsides, the cradle to cradle visions that do exist, biomimicry, bioresins for that matter. There's so many wonderful things that people have done. It's just they're unknown.
I think there's a lot of ways to do it, but sometimes the creativity, maybe it's just creativity for the one person requires a lot of effort. A lot of there's ways that I could probably make it work down here in the basement for lighting. There's ways I could probably put in mirrors, or I can cut some hole in the wall, or there's some things I could do, or I can go to a different room in the house, or I can go outside, but it's still some type of sacrifice.
Well,
it's easier just to flip on the light and come down here at any time of the day when I want and not have to worry about what the light is like outside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and yes, I'm very much relying on the light from outside at the moment. I think, I think there is a certain amount of comfort, complacency that humans have derived in what living is. And I think it's grown well beyond the rate that it should be. We all could use with a bit more struggle in our life to some extent, or in certain areas that we currently don't have it. And I'm not saying that people don't struggle. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying that the types of things we struggle on are often abstract. We don't, many of us, thankfully, some of us do, more than should, struggle with, access to food or having enough.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah,
and that's why I don't want to minimize that.
Yeah.
I know that in some cases that's not the case at all. But for those of us who are doing okay, under a roof, manage to have enough money to have that roof, our struggles become kind of, I don't know, they're weak oftentimes. Like, we get in an argument about who should have the remote control while watching a certain TV show.
They're not physical struggles. They're emotional, they're relational struggles.
Right, but that's because we have the time to take these big intelligent brains of ours and get hyper focused on really, really, throwaway crap. Like, well, my new car, it should be a matte gray and should have a perfect white leather interior. I mean, those are really, really extreme things to have the choice of. But we have placated this country with so many choices and so many options that are so well beyond what we really need. And then we argue about them with each other. It's hilarious. And it's so silly. And I'm a very minimalist guy. I have tried to maintain a small amount of things I own because I just see the struggle that people carry with them by owning so much. And I love hanging out with nature. And you know what? Nature is super free and loves me. And we hang out and have a great time. Anyways, I will remind anybody listening or watching, I do not think this is easy. I do not think there's a magic wand. I don't think there is a one thing that's going to suddenly solve all of this. But I think that's a part of what could be the beauty of it is we could somehow reinvent ourselves and see each other differently in ways that we never imagined if we were more collaborative and more gracious and desirous of this unified idea, and that is of actually being custodians to the earth.
Being custodians of the nature, you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was something that developed in the 60s.
Yeah.
Nature custodians, earth custodians.
Stewards of nature, custodians of nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nature in general and not just our specific plot of nature.
Nature in general. But, well, and that's...
I think it comes down to whether we feel connected to nature or not. And I think honestly, I think it comes down to a lot of these kind of emotional attacks or transgressions or breaks in a relationship, things that have distanced us more and more from nature. It's the things like the frustrations or the betrayals or the uncertainty, things that really screw with some of our plans or take somebody that we love. We can get really angry at a bus driver that kills our friend. We don't necessarily get so angry at a hurricane that kills our friend.
Right.
But we still may not have such a loving relationship with nature after that. We may feel more and more disconnected from nature, like nature just brings pain and sorrow.
Well, but and this is what I mean, is this is the language of nature. Nature is only bringing as much pain and suffering to us as we are to it. Now the thing is, though,
maybe I think nature just does stuff, and it doesn't necessarily like.
Well, but you have to think about it this way, Jim. If you look at the world, right? we've chopped down something like 85% of the trees around the globe, some insane number. So we have harmed the natural, this is like, it's like if you started just picking parts of bacteria off of your body, right? And just got rid of that, made sure it never came back. Something weird would happen to that part of your body, some kind of symbiotic relationship that existed there would be gone. And so when we just keep seeing these things as things for our disposal and for our use, and don't recognize how they play into the whole system that is the earth, then yeah, it's gonna I don't want to say retaliate, but it's going to respond to a condition that has been created. So something you said before too, where you're like, wind is going to come in my window. If you lived in the forest, or if you lived in a cave, like you would have some time ago, but somehow still had a computer and recording equipment.
That's a key distinction, my friend. If I were in a cave, we wouldn't have this stuff.
But it's a lot more complicated. But I do think if we showed the earth in earnest that we wanted to work together, we would start seeing it respond in kind. And then we had that weird brief period at the beginning of the pandemic where suddenly, like, nature hadn't been places for a long period of time, suddenly just started showing up, and like some of the ozone repaired itself. Like, some crazy things happened in just that little brief time when everything just kind of was more or less on pause. A lot of the shipping routes had been shut down. Much less travel was happening. So in terms of the amount of carbon emissions had come down drastically. And the earth seemed to be like, oh, cool, I can kind of breathe for a second. I think we could have that on a regular basis. But yeah, I feel like I'm just starting saying the same thing.
Well, for me, I don't necessarily like the idea of giving agency to it in a way. It will respond in kind, or I don't know. There's a part of me that just doesn't sit with me. That I guess what I'm often translating this from is just in learning how to respond to perceived emotional attacks from another human. And what I try to do is try to imagine what that human is feeling or going through and why they're behaving the way they are. Not their intentions for me or what they're like. Because often if I feel attacked by somebody, if I feel betrayed, it's because the person was afraid to tell me something. It's not because the person was intentionally trying to betray me. They were afraid to do something. And they were worried about something else. And they were insecure and ashamed about something else. And so it's just kind of trying to imagine the dynamics of the other person and not put some blame, because then I feel more connected to that. And so and just want to say that with regards to nature.
Shut my windows real quick.
Sure. Too loud?
Oh, well, yeah. They just started doing some yard work outside, and
which is human environment, right? But this idea of trying to feel more connected to nature, for me, in situations like that, it's not to imagine that nature is feeling hurt and will respond.
No.
It's more of these are the dynamics with nature. Oh, okay, there's more carbon dioxide in the air, which therefore means that it's going to warm up in some places. And, it's warming the permafrost, which is going to... So these are just kind of knee-jerk reflexes instead of...
but there's an equilibrium.
Calculated responses, if that makes sense,
There's an equilibrium or thereabouts. Obviously, it's always in flux because nothing is ever permanent on the earth. But I just would say that we've disrupted the earth's natural equilibrium to such an extent that, of course, we have these way less predictable events happening. It's not to say that if you for every bale of hay, or for every blade of grass you cut down, there's going to be this specific reaction back. It's just, we're so grossly out of balance that then we have these big events that are happening more frequently, because the earth is just literally like, look, man, I just need some of this stuff back, but you keep taking more, and therefore I am behaving and such. And it's not thinking this, it's just doing what it does to maintain itself.
I think for me, why I had that reaction to what you said is because I'm thinking more about the break in relationships we've had that don't really relate to climate change at all. Like me sitting here being like, why is it not sunny? I want natural sunlight so I can record my show. That doesn't have anything to do with climate change. It's my anger towards just the way that the clouds are right now. Like, maybe it has to do with climate change, but not really. It's more of like, why is it not raining today? I need rain for my garden. Like, and the anger, and like, you want to go back to like the rain gods and like and the sun gods and things like this that we had in some ancient societies. And that kind of broken relationship or deteriorating relationship with nature, not because of the change so much, just because of how it is, which I see play out a lot in relationships, where it's like, perhaps one person gets really worried about a lot of stuff, and we're in a relationship with them. We get really frustrated when someone gets so worried, but that's just how they are.
Right.
Maybe that's just how they've been most of their life. They get really stressed out about stuff. And we're like, God, I can't believe that they get so stressed out about stuff. They don't trust me. It's like, no, that has nothing to do with them not trusting you. They don't trust anything, right?
Right.
It's just like the sun shining in has nothing to do with me. It's just the sun shines in or it doesn't shine in based on the water vapor and the clouds. Like,
no, it's not.
It's seeing it in a much more like benign and kind of compassionate way, instead of, oh, it's against me, it's trying to screw me over and ruin my plans. It's like, what? It has no idea what your plans are.
Right.
like they showed something, I think was it Trevor Noah or maybe Steve Colbert? They showed some horses in a pasture, and they're like, they have no idea coronavirus is happening.
Yeah.
These horses they have no idea what we're going through right now.
Right. Nature is not personally trying to hurt us.
It doesn't have a vendetta against us.
No. And that's the other side of it that's cool, though, is we have the facility and capacity to develop a deeper relationship with nature if we so choose. It may be on the grand scale that is the earth that will elude us forever, but on a personal, like you were saying, like with being a custodian of all of nature, like befriending all of nature, or befriending just your local nature, like maybe your backyard or your garden or what have you. I think it can benefit in both of those spaces. But I think of like Native Americans, they will go just on a walk, let's say, not necessarily for hunting or for anything, or just to kind of assess the land. Is they can read so much of nature. It's amazing, just what they can learn. They can know what animals have been there. They can see what type of things harvested well that year, or like just by being present and being in touch and having practiced this, having put effort into that relationship. And yeah, it's like those two things. It's really like humans are so capable of so many things, and at the same time, because we've been so capable of so many things, we would have to like take some really big awkward steps in order to kind of make up for the past, 200 years of really heavy industry and just the scale of the way in which humans impact the world now on a regular basis is so crazy. It's so amplified. And that is I think that's one of the most dangerous and challenging parts of it, is because you want to make a new, you want to make a new phone, right? And that requires, very precious metals from the Congo, for example.
Mm.
And that at the rate that people want your new phone, you really have to do some pretty tough mining in that place in the Congo. That just comes with repercussions, locally and globally. And
on the human population, but also the environmental population.
The number of, I think, ape population has been decimated in the Congo because of I forget the name of the metal that's ored there, but
what's it called? I forget.
Yeah, but you get the point.
Manganese? No.
I think it starts with an M.
Starts with M? Yeah. I think
M
it
or
does too.
P. I can't. It's not one that I remember learning well.
It's deeper down on the periodic table. I can't.
Yeah. Well, it's like I get the cesium, and that's kind of where my metal calcium.
Yeah.
Sodium.
Sodium. I'm down at Na. That's it.
Yeah.
I just remember the ones with the non intuitive names.
Yeah.
Or symbols. Huh?
Well,
Na was sodium. Tin was SN.
Oh, really?
Lead is PB. Yeah, tin was SN because I remember Tim Meadows was on Saturday Night Live at the time.
Did he write it like that?
Tin was SN and lead was PB and some of the ones. Iron is FE.
That's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if you are.
I'm feeling tired and hungry.
Yeah.
Speaking of nature, I want to go eat some plants and animals and animal byproducts. I think just plants. I had Thai food, so I think it's just plants.
Oh, okay.
Coconut milk and all the other mixed vegetables.
Right. I'm mostly a plant guy myself, but
yeah, But then again, the animals fertilize the plants, so in a way, you're still eating plant or animal byproducts.
Yeah, if you put it that way.
Gotcha. There are no vegans. No vegans because animals still have byproducts that benefit plants.
There are no vegans.
Holy crap. Quite literally, yeah?
There's no such thing as a vegetarian.
Holy crap. A vegetarian, maybe. Because vegetarians can still eat animal byproducts, but vegans can't.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Correct.
And if crap is an animal byproduct because it goes through the animals, processed and comes out and fertilizes the plant.
And therein lies the conundrum.
Or plants are pollinated by bees.
Well, and yeah, some vegans go deep.
What do they eat? Rocks?
Well, have you ever heard of breatharians?
What?
Breatharians.
Breatharians? Oh yeah, they don't eat; they just breathe, right?
They like live off sunshine and breathing and water.
And they don't live very long, do they?
I can't say I've met many.
I've heard about them in books, but I've never really seen one in person.
I've read about them, but I've never seen one in real life. I mean, Jainists are they're pretty hardcore.
I guess it's not a direct animal byproduct. It's like a secondary animal byproduct because if it's like...
I mean, once you start, getting that delineated, then everything's connected. So
that's what I mean. And we don't know if plants hurt when they die. Perhaps they suffer just as much as animals do.
They seem to shoot off electrical currents in awareness of being cut.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that's worth.
But whatever. Plants don't. It's like, wait, why do you prioritize animal feelings over plant feelings?
Well, I have thought about this, because a friend of mine back in college was like, "You eat broccoli. How do you know that broccoli didn't feel it?" I'm like, I did not have a comeback back then, but I've thought through this.
But I spent years practicing.
Well, so like if a carrot grows and then you don't pick it, it will just rot and go bad and go back into the ground. So that's like, or a piece of fruit, gets really nice and ripe, and it's very, that's where the low-hanging fruit, that's where that phrase comes from, is the easiest food to grab and go for it. So there is this suggestion from nature of like, hey, I'm just going to keep making this stuff. You want it? It's cool. Tastes good.
If an animal dies, it's just going to rot and disappear too.
Yeah. But a cow won't. I mean, eventually it'll get there, but it won't do it ahead of time.
What do you mean?
It doesn't have like an expiration date where suddenly it goes from like cow to dust. Like, meaning like, and you can tell that a cow feels emotion. So I'm not worried about when I cook up those carrots that was like, oh, I took the life of these carrots.
I think some plants do have like the fruits or the carrots that are designed to be eaten. Especially with the carrots aren't. Those are the root of the plant, right? It kills the plant when you eat the root. The carrot is the root.
But
so it's actually the root of the plant. So when you eat it, the plant dies.
Yeah, but still no. But the whole thing won't survive if it goes through a whole year. Yeah.
So we can only eat animals that have a 1-year life cycle.
And how many animals are like those? Aren't very big animals.
We eat crickets. I don't know. Can vegans eat crickets?
Oh, I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No insects. Yeah.
It depends. I mean, some people classify. We put labels on things, and it really just represents a whole spectrum of stuff.
Yeah. Well, people even say like the meat. Some people use the word meat when they're talking about like the middle of certain vegetables, but.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a word. That's just a whole words game.
Gosh. So let's see.
I love how you're like, I'm hungry, but wait.
Fruits and nuts. I mean, nuts are seeds for the plant to grow, so we're basically eating the babies of plants. and arguably, an apple has seeds on the inside. A fruit has its seeds surrounded by sugar a lot of times, so that animals will eat it and then distribute the seeds elsewhere.
Exactly.
But if we eat, so maybe eating fruits is good because we're helping the plant spread.
Fruit
except
property.
that we're using toilets, and so the plant doesn't spread. The seeds go. Seeds go into the ocean or wherever we disperse of the raw sewage.
Another one of these disconnects from this natural cycle. But
so we're screwing the plants.
No more growing for you.
I don't know. Whenever I take a lot of these things to like, when I keep going deeper and deeper, they don't make any sense. So a part of me just goes, okay, fine, you're vegan. Like, whatever, do your thing.
There is a great.
At some point, we have to kill things to eat them. Like, we have to.
Yeah.
Whether we want to, it's impossible.
You have to shorten the life of something in order for you to maintain your life.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very zero-sum way of looking at life.
I didn't say that it was all those shortenings of some of those things. You eat a strawberry, it's not shortening its life that much.
Actually, strawberry has little seeds in it, right? So strawberry,
yeah,
a lot of little seeds.
Strawberry wants me to poop it out in the forest, but I'm not going.
But no, I'm not gonna. I'm not allowed to do that. I'll go to prison. So I'm gonna.
Wait.
That's fascinating. What's that called? Have you heard about this guy in LA called the Guerrilla Gardener? I think it was Ron something.
Maybe.
Yeah. African American gentleman from LA. I think Ron. I can't remember his last name, but like they call him like the Guerrilla Gardener or something along those lines.
You don't hear that?
No.
Wow. Okay, great.
But
It's so loud here. Sorry.
But yeah, that could be a new one where we just like eat fruits and go around and defecate in public. We dig a little hole, we defecate.
We would definitely have to mask up.
So in conclusion, this is how we're going to solve climate change.
Gorilla pooping
in public.
Yes. What are you doing? I'm propagating nature. Leave me alone.
Superfoods. We can grow superfoods.
That, yeah, I would. Oh man, that would be a great just like art group.
An art project. Everyone eats apples and strawberries and goji berries and stuff, and then they just
drop trowel around the city. Yeah, that'd be hilarious. But
it'd be a fun experiment to see if it actually works.
Yeah, I don't know how long that could survive, and the entertainment value or whatever value would coincide with it would last. But
okay. Anyways, enough talk about climate change. All right, Caleb, thanks for joining. I'm going to go get some food and
get those plants.
I think it's about, okay, last thing.
Okay.
If I remember how some of the indigenous communities would do it, it's not about not eating the animal or not eating the plant. It's about feeling love and connection for the animal or plant while eating it. You know, it's that, listen, I know I need to eat this to survive. And I can imagine, you know, whatever, I imagine how must it feel to be a plant and whatever, all those things, just to feel gratitude and love for that being.
A sacred connection.
The degree of connection. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the way I try to look at life, is that I can dislike what something is doing to me and still feel connected to it. Or I could,
you could argue
something and still feel connected to it. Huh?
I said you could argue that might be the kind of the purpose for a lot of our life, is just what you said.
What did I say? Sometimes I just speaking, I go blank.
You can be angry at something but still feel connected to it.
Oh yeah.
Or feel just like somehow whatever it is that you're trying to reconcile, did something that impacted you negatively, and still feel love for that. That's high level, wisdom and I think spiritual attainment there.
Yeah, right. Isn't that the goal of a lot of religions, like agape or nirvana, and some of this stuff is to just feel connected to it no matter what happens.
Love your enemies. That was brought up recently. And it's like, it's true. If we can manage to do that, my gosh, we could do so much more.
MLK in a speech called "Loving Your Enemies," fantastic speech. I think from 1957 or something around there. It's on YouTube. And he basically says, when I say about loving your enemies, it's not about liking your enemies. Oh, there are plenty of people I don't like the way they talk to me. I don't like the way they look at me. I don't like how they treat me. But it's about loving them. It's about believing in their redemptive goodwill. It's like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only way to move forward, I think.
So same thing with nature. We can hate that the sun stops shining and then starts shining and then stops shining, or gives us, sunburn and all this stuff. But sun's just doing its thing. I still like the sun. I still love the sun. If I didn't have the sun, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sun. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Don't get me started about the sun.
Here comes the sun. Anyways. Yeah. All right, Mr. Caleb, be well. Thank you all for listening in, or live or on the recorded version. And we'll talk to you more soon. Take care, y'all.
See you, Jim.
See you, Caleb.